That's not what we're used to. I mean, we're used to looking people in the eye, not looking at this little
Yes.
itty bitty camera.
Yeah.
All right. So it's been a little while, Willie. I saw you. I saw you in that presentation you did in Dubai, which I thought was brilliant. Had a great time watching you present there.
I
But
really enjoyed that. Yeah.
it's amazing that it took a pandemic to really get some things like that going, right? But that was just fun to watch you present there. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself. World champion of public speaking with Toastmasters, businessman, Air Force vet. Give us a little of your background.
Yeah. Okay. So what you would call a military brat. My dad was in the Army, and I joined the Air Force at age 17, right out of high school, and spent the next 20 years in the Air Force, traveling all over the world. I was in the intelligence business. We worked for the National Security Agency, and I'm a Vietnam vet. I spent 2 years in Vietnam. I went to Vietnam on my regular tour, and before the Gulf of Tonkin, as a matter of fact. And
Wow.
then my brother, my older brother, who was avoiding the draft back in those days, he finally got drafted, and he decided that he was going to go to Canada, like many thousands other people. And our family grabbed him by the neck and said, "That ain't going to happen. If you get the call, you go." And so he joined the Army. He was drafted into the Army, and then I'm in Germany at the time. And I'm saying, well, if he's finally drafted into the Army, I'm going back to Vietnam volunteering, because I don't want him to go to Vietnam, because if he does, he's probably going to get killed. And
Right.
the law at that time was that two brothers could not be in the war zone at the same time. So I went back and spent another year there until they shipped him to Germany. So I retired and moved to California after 20 years. I moved to Hawaii shortly after that, opened a computer store. I was in Toastmasters since '83. I won the World Championship of Public Speaking in '97, traveled the world, did a world tour speaking about that, had a great time traveling all over the world. And actually, my whole career changed when 9/11 happened, because I was outside the United States doing business in Africa and Europe, and the anti-American sentiment started rising all around the world. So contracts kind of dried up for me. Then in 2004, I had a cancer scare, and that also brought me off the road. And then in 2008, I had legs went bad, and so health sort of took me out of all of that. I finally recovered, and about 2012, I started back on the speaking genre and moving around and doing speaking. And today I'm in the middle of a pandemic, and you get up every day and you literally don't know what comes next. This thing has us by the neck, and it doesn't seem to be wanting to let us go. So I wake up every day, not being pessimistic about it, because I'm not a pessimistic guy, but I'm saying we got to fight this thing. I'm sort of a fighter. So I want to get out and fight it, but I don't know how. I have no idea. So I'm in the high risk group. So my job is to stay alive, and therefore I avoid people and all things related to catching the virus. So I'm sort of tiptoeing around right now. Different way of living, let me put it that way, because my natural inclination is that I'm a touchy-feely guy. I'm a guy that'll hug you. I'm one of those type people, and I like that. And so not being able to do that for fear of being infected with a virus sort of makes me have to think twice all the time, because I can't do what I normally would do. So rather than saying hello to somebody and walking toward them and putting my arm on them, I have to say hello and walk in the other direction. And that's a different way of it's having to pre-think. Normally you do things subconsciously. You just do it because that's what you always do. But now I have to consciously think of everything that I'm doing, and it tires me out, to tell you the truth. It really does. And
Yeah.
I think that psychologically, this virus is having more of an effect on us psychologically than it is with the. I know the infection is bad, but I think the psychological damage is probably even worse, and we don't even know it yet.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right on that. The psychological side of it is crucial for so many people, and I'll tell you that even for myself, you know, have to transition everything from live to digital, you know, to Zoom. That's not what we're used to. I mean, we're used to look at people in the eye, not looking at this little itty
Yes.
bitty camera and try to
Yes,
figure out how to communicate through this camera, right? It's
exactly.
quite a bit different than what we're used to. With your career and everything that you've done, tell us a little bit about communication and how important that has been in everything that you've been able to do.
People sometimes ask me. They say that I seem to have a natural way of standing up and being listened to, and I take that as I accept that because I know it's true. But in my case, you know, when I went to first grade at 5 years old, I didn't go to kindergarten, and so I'm in first grade at 5 years old, and in Tacoma, Washington. The school was Charlotteshan Elementary. If anybody's out there, shout out to Charlotteshan. So my teacher was named Miss Stocking. And Miss Stocking was the first adult woman that I had contact with close other than my mother. So Miss Stocking and I kind of bonded. I don't remember how. I just remember that I would sit on the front row in class and I would raise my hand and I would answer questions all the time. And that fed on itself. And what happened is that I would go home after school and I would make sure I knew everything that I thought Miss Stocking wanted me to know. And the next day I'd sit gladly on the front row and raise my hand and had a good time. And she would sometimes hug me and I liked affection. And so what that did for me is set me on a path that after first grade, all the way through school, I would sit on the front row. And I would raise my hand and I would have the answer. So that meant in order to have the answer, I had to study. So I was never afraid to stand and speak to people. So I've always been able to do that very easily. The question is, I didn't understand the nuances of communication. I didn't understand the technical aspects of it, but I've never had a fear of it, which is usually the first thing that we encounter when someone asks us to stand up and speak. It's the fear of being rejected. I never felt that. I never had that. But then I would stand up and speak, and I never had feedback as to whether it was good or bad until I joined Toastmasters. And my journey in Toastmasters began when I found out at the first meeting that you get an evaluation. Someone actually stands up and they tell you what they heard you say. They tell you what they thought about it, and they tell you how it made them feel, and they give you suggestions on how they believe you can improve it. That, to me, was one of the most valuable things that ever came into my life, and it taught me that there is a lot more to communications than just standing up and talking. So I started that journey with Toastmasters, and when I won the World Championship in 1997, that was a culmination of hard work. It wasn't a fluke.
And that wasn't your first time either, was it?
Huh?
You were on that stage before, right?
Yes, I was there in '83. I joined Toastmasters in 1980, and I joined, and I don't know how. I think I made it on Raw Talent. That I think Miss Stocking got me there in 1983. You know, the Miss Stocking syndrome got me there in '83. But here I am in '83. I'm standing on the stage with 8 other contestants in the World Championship. I don't have any technical expertise at all. I mean, I got a little, let's say, but nothing that that I could say, oh yeah, I know how to do this. I just did what I thought was best. And I can tell you, I believe that, not only believe, I did every single thing down to the nanosecond. of what I wanted to do on that stage that morning. So I got off the stage feeling absolutely satisfied with what it is that I had achieved in those 7 minutes. Well, of course, I didn't win. I didn't place, and I didn't show. But the winner, his name was Roy Fenstermacher, rest his soul. He was electric. He was magnetic. He created an energy in that room that made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. I felt it, I heard it, I saw it, and I said to myself, I don't know what that is, but it's really, really good. And if I can ever learn to do that, what he just did, whatever it is, I'm going to win this contest. And that's what I set about to do. That's what I did. And when I had it all in hand, I went back and now remember, this is 83. I never entered the contest again until 97. And the reason I didn't enter it in the interim years is I wasn't ready. When I got ready, I entered it, and it never even occurred to me that I was not going to win because I had prepared.
Right. You had complete certainty that you were going all the way.
Absolutely.
You were taking this thing 100%. That's fantastic. So did you in your journey, did you seek out a mentor, or did he actually kind of take you under his wing and show you some things?
You know, back in those days, David, I did, the concept of mentoring was not in the forefront. Coaching was it was more a formalized thing. Those weren't words you heard very often. At least I didn't hear them. Maybe they were talked about. I didn't hear them. What I did is I would seek out people who I believed had that magical thing. And surprisingly, I found a lot of them in evangelists on TV. So as an example, let's say Oral Roberts or Jimmy Swaggart. So I would watch these evangelists on TV, and what was mesmerizing about them is the control they seemed to have over the audience. And so that's what I wasn't so much, I was mesmerized by the fact that Jimmy Swaggart could be speaking, and in the blink of an eye, he would be crying. And I'd say to myself, how does he do that? How does he just cry on cue? And the audience would be in the same emotional state, that whatever emotional state he wanted them to be in, he could get them there, just talking to them. So I never really understood it so much, but I found it mesmerizing. And then I started reading books. I started reading all the self-help books I could find. And in Toastmasters, I would go listen to the speakers in the organization who had reputations for being great. I was in Phoenix, Arizona for a long time, for 6 years, and that's the home of the National Speakers Association. So a lot of great speakers were over there, and I would go listen to them. No one knew, I mean, I'm sure they thought I was there to listen to whatever message they were trying to deliver, and I wasn't. I was there to look at their technique. What is it that they're doing that creates all of this buzz in this room? And how can I emulate that? How can I learn that? That was my whole journey that I was on, and it paid off.
We got to wrap up here because I promised you an hour, and I've already taken an hour and a minute of your time. But if you had anything that you wanted to share with emerging leaders, with new leaders, maybe they're newly promoted, what advice would you give them when it comes to communication and leadership, just to kind of wrap up or sum up what you've talked about today?
You have two jobs as a supervisor or a manager. You got two jobs. Your first priority, believe it or not, is to make your boss look good. Your first priority. The whole reason you're there is to make your boss look good. Now, a lot of people would say, I'm telling you, your first job is to make your boss look good. Now, how do you make your boss look good? By developing that rapport and that leadership with the people who are working for you, molding them into a well-oiled machine that's going to get the job done in a way that the boss that you're working for is looking good. So you're the bridge between the people who are working for you and the people you work for.
You know, Willie, you just saved our audience reading 200 pages, because in this book, it is 200 pages, and on those 200 pages, it says, make your boss look good. That's your job.